Well, hello, everybody. We have an amazing guest with us today. And first, welcome our listeners and viewers to Fort Collins Fellas. My name is Chris Murphy. Is with me as always is Patrick Soukup. And today we have the mayor of Fort Collins, Jeni Arndt. And we are so thrilled to have you, Jeni. And I know we got a bunch of questions, and I know a lot of people have kind of given us some questions to ask you, but thank you so much for coming on and being on Fort Collins Fellas.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Perfect. Well, we're going to jump into a bunch of topics today, but why don't you just give our listeners and viewers just a quick background on, how you became, how you got into politics. And I know you went to Boulder. I saw that you did grad school at Purdue. I believe you're a Boilermaker as well. But I'd love to get a little backstory on kind of how you arrived at your position here as mayor of Fort Collins.
Oh, sure. Well, I can't say native because I was born in Boulder, but when I was 3 weeks old, my parents moved me here. I'm the youngest of four. So I guess that's sort of whatever. In 1964, that makes me 58 years old. And people, a little bit of back, just personal. I have three grown children. My husband and I'm married 34 years around there. We met at Colorado College. I went to Moore, Blevins, and Poudre, and then I went to Colorado College. I did a graduate degree at Boulder. Then we went in the Peace Corps together in Morocco. From there, we went to Purdue, and he got a PhD, and I did another master's degree in special ed, and I became a teacher. And then eventually, I also got my PhD there at Purdue in language and literacy. We lived in Denmark on a postdoc for him when I was having two little ones and pregnant with the third, so full mom.
Wow.
And then back to Purdue, and then we took we always wanted to raise our kids partially overseas, specifically in Africa, where we had so much enrichment. And so we moved to Mozambique for 6 years between 2002 to 2008. And two of our kids are overseas now, and one said, burn my passport. So there you go. We had a variety of experiences. And then when we moved back, my husband was then working for the United Nations. And so he was going to travel a lot. He said, well, why don't we just move to your hometown, Fort Collins? I was like, oh, why don't we? So great. So I came back in 2008 after being gone 24 years or something. And, I had been on some school boards around and just been very civically active all my life. And when people say, when did you get into politics? I always say first grade, because really it's just community service. And my dad was always the one, two messages: root for the underdog. And if your teacher asks you to do anything, you raise your hand. So pretty soon you're cleaning desks after school, and then you're showing up at the carnival early to take tickets. And then next thing you know, they need someone to run to the principal's office, and the principal needs a student advisory council. And it just keeps going from there. Public service is really about serving your community. And that's been a theme in my life. I love people. I love all of them, every single last one.
What did you teach? What grades did you teach?
Special education.
Special education. Okay. My dad was a teacher for about 25 years.
So that was a good fit for me. And then for a while I was a middle school principal, where I feel like everyone has special needs. So I was like, I just really love people. And I especially love people who need maybe extra help. And that came from my dad saying that. Yeah. And then when I moved back, some of my mentors and teachers at Poudre High had just said, well, why don't you run for state rep? And I said, you're crazy, And then when I got it through my little thick head that like running for elected office was really, an election is really just an opportunity to ask your community if they'd like you to serve. Mm-hmm. And once I kind of understood that, then I said, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll try. And so then I was elected in 14, 16, 18, and 20 to the state legislature. And then again, the community came calling across a broad political spectrum, which is really important to me, asking if I would consider running for mayor. And I saw it as another opportunity to serve my hometown. And so that happened in 21. And here I am today.
That's great. Well, go ahead, Patrick. Sorry.
Pretty awesome as far as, for me, I would say just hearing you is inspiring for, kind of your servant heart, because I would say that I'm full of excuses when it comes to service and giving back and volunteer, work. I always tell me and my wife talk about it, that we're going to do that. That is important to us. But there's kind of a time in your life is how I put it. And I've been on a few boards, and man, it is a commitment on that. And I find myself not giving my full 100% heart because I have my mind on different things. So, that is amazing that you're able to kind of balance being a mother, working, and giving back to the community as much as you have, for as long as you have too.
But I think you're dead right. And I always say, service has no hierarchy. People are like, oh, you took a step down from the legislature. I go, to what? I don't see a hierarchy in service. And I don't see also what you're doing. I was a stay-at-home mom for 5 years, full on Disney movies, diapers, the whole thing. I was not really serving outside of that during those years, but that in itself is a service, right? I mean, if you're all contributing to your neighborhood, your community, so you organize a neighborhood potluck, right? So I just feel like I always want to talk to people about just being a good business person and being a great parent. That's great. And then there are times in your life where you have more of a gap where you can serve in different ways. So I don't feel bad. You're doing it. We're all doing it.
I got my first kid due in December, so my wife and I are jumping in here soon.
You're heading in. Oh, call us when you reemerge.
I'm trying to get my sleep in now. But, before we started recording, you made a great comment. You were almost like you wanted to hear from us. Obviously, we're kind of more on the, I do mortgages here in town, and Patrick's got a real estate company that he runs. And it's amazing who is moving to Fort Collins. Just for example, I can just off the top of my head, we have a conversation with a gentleman from Germany later this afternoon who's looking to move here. We had, Patrick and I had mutual clients of school teachers from New Orleans that moved up here. Everybody says they're coming from California, and there are people coming from California, but truly people are coming to Northern Colorado and Fort Collins from literally all around the world, I guess you could say, and all around the country. And, as we kind of start this conversation and everything like that, you're the mayor of Fort Collins, one of the fastest growing areas in the country, right? And you're doing it during a pretty crazy time in this country, as you probably know. But first thing I wanted to kind of go into is obviously a real estate side, and that's like affordability and what we're seeing. And we reached out to some friends and some colleagues in the area, and we said, well, we're going to be interviewing the mayor. And one of the questions that came up a number of times is the U+2 policy that's going on. And just a quick backstory. I lived in Los Angeles when I was in my early 20s. And the only way I could have lived in LA is I lived with 4 or 5 roommates. And one of my friends mentioned, even if you have a couple, living in a house around CSU, I know it's a popular topic around CSU, but I would love, let's just get started with what is happening with U+2. And one of the questions is it going to be U+3? Is that even on the books? And I'll let you take it from there. But what are your thoughts on that? And what have you heard? And are things going to be done about that?
Sure. So we're looking at the land use code right now, right? And that's just where we build what we build. Yep. I would never speak for council, but we had a work session, and it seems like we're supportive of the housing strategic plan that the council before us passed. And that includes higher density in some regions, more density, obviously near transit. So I'm really forward thinking. And I would say for those of us who've traveled a lot and everywhere, not that forward thinking. I mean, it's forward thinking probably, but other communities specifically in Europe are much further along in my view on this sort of where we're heading for Collins. And I want to say that I'm glad that we're heading there. So that's the land use code and what gets built where. Very important. The next one will be a housing occupancy discussion, which I like to frame it in that way. I have several thoughts on this, but I think it's a little anachronistic to decide on how many people live per house based on marital status. And here comes my libertarianness. But that's the government saying, conferring a license on people, and then you can, that seems sort of old fashioned to me in terms of how we define a family and what that means and who gets to live together. So I like to just, U+2 is catchy, right? It's easy to say, right?
Yeah.
So, but I want to talk about housing occupancy and then livability, right? So people who are very attached to that notion of U+2 have a really kind heart and thinking about how do we preserve families and neighborhoods. That's a good thing to think about. And we have families reimagining what a family is and what a neighborhood means. So we need to, in my view, modernize that. It's way more, it doesn't solve the affordability. And I understand if I were a landlord and I had 4 bedrooms and I could rent 3, I wouldn't say, oh, okay, let's take that pot of money and divide by 4. I'd say, no, I get another, I would jack them, right? I understand that, but it does have to do with supply, right?
Right.
And that's important. And it's more modern the way people are living, right? So the pandemic showed us, obviously, all 3 of my adult children came home, right? And that was great. And my mom lives across the street on Mulberry. But if we want to talk about preserving the family unit, even if that's the basis of a discussion, I think it preserves the family unit to add an ADU, to add more occupancy, right? To be more modern and flexible in the way we imagine people are living. And it's more sustainable. Right?
You made a comment, and then I read an article, and it was, I would consider myself less politically affiliated with either party, but you made a comment, and it just really resonated with me, and it was such a great, kind of blip, and but it was, I don't know if we can regulate ourselves to affordability, but we may deregulate ourselves to affordability when in discussion, specifically talking about ADUs. And I follow the planning and zoning review weekly. I see what is coming down the pipeline and what's being presented and, pushed through. And I've been seeing more and more ADUs, and I can't agree with that more in regards to, man, you're sitting on a 1/4 acre in Old Town and quickly could build a garage with an apartment unit above it. And, we're talking significant amount of housing units built out of thin air, so to speak, that I, went and visited my buddies in Portland, and it was just, that's how they were doing it. That's a big thing there. And so it was a comment that it really resonated with me. And I thought it was really forward thinking that why are we now, granted, also, I think, Chris, you could attest to this because I'm working with clients right now from California. And obviously there's land use code, how many square footage can go on percentage wise based off of this, the size of the lot and things of that nature. Because in California, it's not, San Francisco and those areas, it's not uncommon to see 4 houses on one lot because of that exact same thing. So it's kind of how do we get there? And, it's
isn't the pushback on it, is it, you talked about neighborhoods and families, is I guess the pushback to this is people don't want, they have a family and they're raising, and they're in, let's say they're right around CSU, for example, because this is obviously a hot topic between students, and they don't want to have 8 people move in next door, right? I mean, that's the pushback that they're getting. Is like, hey, we got to have some sort of policy in place, and obviously there's got to be a fine line, because we got to have people that are young that can't afford to buy a home right now, but love Fort Collins or like, for example, the 2 couples. You have 2 couples that aren't married, right? And because a lot of them was like, why don't they just make it U+3? I know these are clever terms and stuff like that, but when you're out there talking to people that are against, this, is it about, hey, we don't want to live next to college students, or is it more than that?
The feeling that's expressed to me is that not so much ageism, as the 4-bedroom house with 8 people in it,
right,
who are unrelated. And I would submit that when I really drill down into that, I go, do you really care? And they go, well, it's really the noise or the party or the trash I said, great, we have codes for that.
Right.
We have noise ordinances, and we have, yard, whatever, I don't know, things. So, and then also we could do it more very deliberately, right? So there will be some areas where probably it makes sense to have lower density housing. I always think of the neighborhood across from Blevins. It's a, typical 70s suburban, you guys are realtors, they have that nice village green pool and those sorts of things. We could make them a lot more dense I live near CSU, and I bought my house very intentionally near CSU because I love the noise. I like the activity, a couple beer cans on my lawn, whatever.
I'm on College and Prospect. We just moved to College and Prospect.
Yeah,
My
I'm on
wife and
Mulberry
I.
Street. I'm like, bring it,
Yeah.
Food
Yeah.
trucks, they're like, do those food truck rally? I'm like, no, I stand out there and let people park in my driveway. 4th of July, I'm like, park here, free. I'll bring you a beer. I like that. So, but not everyone does, right? So but you could be more intentional near the campus where it makes sense. And CSU's done a nice job of building more campus housing, right? Then near the transit, absolutely. People want a walkable city.
Yeah.
Again, we need to do more mixed use, right? So, again, I live right here across from City Park. We have that new restaurant, Little. We have Beavers. People are like, I love your neighborhood. I mean, oh my gosh, it's such a no-brainer. Well, we have a little restaurant and we have a little grocery store. And it does make all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so why would we not have that or allow that in any neighborhood?
This is kind of weird. How much power do you have as the mayor?
None, almost none. No, that's a great question. And we talk about this. So we have a council manager model.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So some weak mayor, I'm like, hey, no, but it's not a strong mayor. Like, I don't run the city. I don't, my big joke is I got to go to work because that city doesn't run itself, but that's just a joke because it actually does. But the role of the mayor, and I think about these things a lot because I'm very invested in our democracy and all that. The role of the mayor is to bring the voice of the people to City Hall because I don't work for the city. Mm-hmm. And they're always like, well, wait, you always use the third person when you talk about the city. I go, right, I don't work here. I work for the people. And that's why I love doing what I'm doing now, listening to what people are saying. I get to bring that voice to our city government structure, right? And then, of course, the sitting on city council, 1 of 7. I'm not the boss of city council. People think I am, but I'm not. I run the meetings, but I have 1 equal vote. And then, in mayor circles, I have lots of mayor friends across the country. We talk about sort of some are strong mayors, like Mayor Hancock is and then the majority are this council. And then you talk about sort of soft power or setting the tone and bringing the voice of the people. So, and we can run ordinances and we'll approve or not approve the land use code. We work obviously hand in hand with the city staff.
Yeah, Darren Attenberry did a great job of kind of describe. I would encourage our listeners and viewers to listen to that episode of how how it works, basically how Fort Collins is governed, and I definitely would recommend that. But you mentioned people love to walk and love walking communities, and we got to ask you about Montava. Okay. And one of the largest, it's going to be the largest community, I think, in Fort Collins. And how is that going? I guess everybody wants to know. I actually went to the city council meeting where everybody came up and gave what they thought about it. And it was really fascinating to sit in that room. And this is when Mayor Wade Troxel was there. But what is the latest with Montava right now? There's
some concern over water adequacy for the development. And I would say right now that's where that is. And there's some legal things, so I probably let that to the court, right? But the way Montava is designed, I would say, is basically exactly what the conversation is in Fort Collins. A livable, walkable city, people who live, there's a lot of traffic out Northeast now, but it's because where do you get milk? You have to get in your car to come get milk, right? So there's some real forward-thinking planning of Montava. And then I always say that the city should be agnostic on the developer and the development as long as they meet our land use codes. So I said, I don't want to take a pro or con about Montava. Here's the land. Do they own it? Do they meet the parameters of the city? And if so,
do it.
Then right. I don't even need to vote on that because I already voted on the land use code and how we're using water and everything else. I think the city should be agnostic on the business sector when the private sector, who are really what is a city, we can talk about that. I love that too. I think that we should be agnostic. Is it, it doesn't meet our goals, our plans, our walkable city, and can they provide the water? And
what is the hurdle with the water? Can you shed light on that? I mean, obviously, water is a huge topic here in northern Colorado, but what specific with Montava is the issue there?
There's some legal proceedings now that I probably would leave to the court, but let me just say water adequacy. Yeah.
Okay. And do you think it'll get solved?
I do. I think eventually.
Yeah.
Will we still be around when Montava is finished?
Well, it's quite an ambitious project.
It is.
I know, and I know Max a little bit, Max Moss, and actually interviewed him on a previous podcast. But
I spoke to a large group over lunch one day, and someone raised their hand, and it surprised me, this gentleman's comment, and said, absolutely nobody wants Montava to go through. And I said, nobody except for the 4,000 families who are going to move here.
Yeah.
I don't know what that meant. So, again, I like being agnostic on the business sector because I don't think the government should get in that. I think our job is to say, these are our plans, our goals. It's the people have voted us in to approve these things. Our climate future, 15-minute walkable city, the housing strategic plan, all those things, land use code, quality standards. And once you've met those.
Yeah.
Speaking of those 4,000 families that are, kind of trying to maybe make their way here at some point or another, where do you see kind of Fort Collins' growth in the city? And it is, that's probably like one of the common questions that, we'll get from clients is, well, we're, especially right now with the kind of the unique atmosphere, dynamic economic world that we're living right now is, well, we're just going to kind of explore and maybe just wait to see, for Fort Collins to drop. And I'm like, honestly, I'm not ever going to try to make any predictions or anything of that nature, but I can tell you that we're having conversations with, tons of people that are making their way here to Fort Collins. And as the mayor, where do you guys see, Fort Collins in the next 10 or 20 years, as far as the population goes and the health of our economy?
So our build out's 250 with the growth management area, and then the eventual annexation of East Mulberry. We are currently the fourth largest city in Colorado. And then sort of nationally, it's weird to say this, but we kind of punch above our weight in some of the things that we've done. So I'm routinely asked to go to national conferences and international conferences and talk about some of the things that Fort Collins has done, which, wasn't me, but as the sort of spokesperson, right? So that's an interesting dynamic, I think. Having said all that, so it's about 250, and then we'll be hemmed in by our, land. That's the other thing I talk about when we talk about density is, it's math. If our people are 250 and we have finite land and finite water, guess what? We're going to have to use less and share more, especially because one of our deep ethics is also our parks and natural areas and open space. So we will have to trade our private open space, my backyard, for our community value of public open space, parks and natural areas. And I just feel like that just means that we need to live closer or have ADUs or do those other things, right? That's just the math. So that's where I see that going. I mean, economically, I'll tell you, and these are just some things like I think about. We haven't attracted a major employer to Fort Collins in a long time, right? And we love Ford and HP and, Colorado State University, I think.
Woodward Governor, obviously been around for a long time.
Obviously Woodward, those are great. Waterpick, these are great companies that have either moved here or been invented here, like Waterpick. The guy, Roush, who invented Waterpick, I live in his house. So that's kind of fun. But
what's his first name again? Sorry.
I know, was it Bill Roush? Bill.
So, all right, this is a great Bill Roush, you're right. Before I'm born and raised in Fort Collins, but I used to be a golf pro at LA Country Club, and Bill was a member at LA Country Club. I remember him saying, he's like, yeah, Waterpick. I'm like, Waterpick? I go, in Fort Collins? He goes, yeah, that's where I started. Anyways, that's just a small world story, but keep going on.
Well, Patrick, you're a Soukup, right? Mm-hmm. Are you related to Mark?
I am.
Yeah, so Mark and my dad were tennis partners.
Oh, really?
Yes. So cool. My name is really Jeni James. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, all
So
right.
Dave James was my dad, and he was president of the chamber and all
Yep.
that. And then Libby James, the little fasty runner lady, is my mom.
Oh,
So
that's so cool.
we've known the Soukups forever. And then my brother Kurt James has also played a lot of tennis.
There you
And so
go.
my dad started the tennis center in town out north. Right. So blah, 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 like that.
Well, that's
But go back to the businesses. I always joke with people. I go, it's only a matter of time, I feel like, before one of these big tech companies comes. What do you think? Or is that a challenge, or do you want that?
Oh, well, business is the cornerstone of our, I don't know. But over and over again, we see them choosing other locations, right? For better or worse. But again, back to the, my view, and I like strict building codes and standards, but we have made the process very bureaucratic.
Yeah.
And
36 months for like entitlements right now is kind of what the builders are saying.
It's really challenging, right? It's almost downright unwelcoming. Yeah. And I don't think that's who Fort Collins has ever really been. And I don't think, when I talk to people, they don't mind high standards.
Right.
They are willing to meet those. I think it's more of the time, and then sometimes not having clear guidelines or goalposts that move.
Yeah. I talked with one developer. I was at a conference recently, and the comment that he made, and it made a lot of sense. He's like, I really don't care. I want a hard yes or a hard no, but I can't have maybe. And I can't have different people sitting on the review process throughout the 8 different meetings that we have to go through. I want the same person with the same set of eyes telling me the exact same thing from meeting 1 to meeting 8.
Exactly. And that's, I love thinking about government and its role. And it's like, what is government and who, and I love all that. One thing I know government should be is reliable and predictable. People deserve that. And I feel like that's been maybe a little bit of a challenge. I don't want to be critical, right? But I do.
How do you change that viewpoint from, say a Twitter that wants to have an offshoot campus here in Fort Collins that has their economic team come and explore like Amazon did for how many ever months in Loveland before they finally pulled the trigger, and make that apparent to them that we want and are welcoming to business? Is that over significant amount of years and time that we have to change that because of all of the land use codes that you guys, as far as you guys, I mean, city council has voted over the last 10, 20 years that have made this very cumbersome for those companies? So is it a long tail for us to see any types of changes for those companies?
One of the express goals of the new land use code is simplicity and easy to interpret. Now, I do think, again, I hesitate to be critical, but I have heard, and this is not my purview. So we have 3 direct reports. We have the city manager, the judge, and the city attorney report to council. And then the structures after that, they run the city. So I don't really want to be, but I will tell you 99% of my calls come about these issues, right? I got this answer, then I went back and I got, these sorts of things, right? Now we have had a lot of turnover. I'm not making excuses, right? I personally don't have the whole picture enough to change that, but I do know that there's enough bureaucracy. Sorry.
Dogs are welcome.
Okay. And sometimes, in our notion to be collaborative, we can be overly. So I heard this from a water and sand district. They say, you go to the county, you get one guy, he goes back and talks to 20 other people, and they come back and give you an answer. He goes, you come to the city, they want to meet with the 20 people all at the same time. And he said, when that happens, and that's collaborative, and that's, getting a lot of viewpoints, and we kind of think that's great, except for it'll be 4 months before you can get that same meeting on all 20 people's calendars. Yeah. So I think inadvertently we have maybe gone to a place where we have traded that notion for an efficiency notion.
I feel like this is really interesting. When we're talking with my team and I, we come up with ideas to grow our business or something like that. First of all, you're never going to please everybody. Okay. And you're never, if you try to take the time to find the perfect answer, you're never ever going to get anything done. And it sounds like, at some point somebody's just got to be like, let's just do it, and it's, I know that sounds so much easier said than done, but right? Like at one point you just say, you know what? Okay, if we do it and we fail, guess what? We tried, and now we learned something from it. Instead of sitting there, like you said, hey, let's get, we got everybody together. We'll meet again in 4 more months. And then, Patrick mentioned there's a 36-month. At some point, you just got to go, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and go. And as mayor, like, are you able to kind of like nudge people and go, hey, come on, we've talked about this enough.
Or just lose my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, if you knew me, I'm down there going, because I'm the only elected in City Hall, right?
Yep.
So it's kind of lonely.
Yeah.
But, I have this big entrepreneurial bone in my body. My mom, my parents, I can't even tell you how much stuff they did and started and failed at and tried again and did this or that, It's just how many family businesses have we had? Oh my God, everything from striping parking lots to like hats with the hole in them. And, it just doesn't end. I have my own little side hustle. My mom's still making greeting cards out of tea bags. This is just what we do.
Yeah.
And yes, it is not a bad counterweight to, I'll just be like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But that's just how I talk. They're getting used to me. I think it's been a little bit of a shock.
In a year. April of last year is when you,
yeah, it's been a surprise, I think. But I'm like, what do we do that for? No, again, realizing I don't, that's not my lane. Right.
Yeah.
But if something comes to me to sign and it's got 14 signatures before me, that's too many.
I just had I don't know. No, they went through the builder's lender, but the gentleman was coming from Boise and had to get approval for remote work. And we're talking about, not a high level government official by any means or governmental employee. Great job, great, career, had to have 8 signatures to approve his remote work prior to being allowed, to get approved for his loan. And it was just nuts. And it's not just Fort Collins, it's all over the place, and it makes it very difficult. And I think, we mean well by putting in these hurdles that have to overcome, because there was an issue that happened at one point in time.
One-off.
That, forever forward has to be addressed, and then compound that by 30 years and one issue every 30 years. And you got 30 signatures.
Well, exactly. And there is sort of, and I just feel like Fort Collins is different there. I guess it's from the lens of my father and his friends, like Gene Mitchell lived across the street from us. It's like people just thinking about stuff and doing it, and failing, right? Bankruptcy was, common. But we have to get back to that. Or some sort of it. Someone asked me like what they did some big study on women mayors and something innovation correlation. And they wrote and they said, why do you think that is? I said, maybe we just have a higher, not women. I don't like the gender card so much, but you have to have a high tolerance for failure. Yeah. Like it's okay. I would say also trust, right? So I really trust people. I don't know. I just do. And I think it's never let me down, because, when you really trust your building official or your department head, you give them the freedom to think and be creative and innovate. Now, are they going to make a mistake? Then that's where you come in to say, look, I trust that you were trying in your best faith effort. That didn't work. All right, let's pivot. What did we do wrong? How do we do it again? And let's get better. Yeah. I don't know anyone who doesn't, are there some truly people out there who make, yes, okay. But again, that's the one-off, and you legislate or you administrate to the one, you are missing 99% of all the goodness out there, where if you put more trust in the people that you've hired to do the job and let them do their job, and then they trust the people, I promise you get good things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when they make a mistake, you got to get their back. Right. And be like,
right.
Oops.
Learn from it, move forward, and get better.
Yeah.
Jeni, one other question that came up a lot when we were kind of getting ready for your interview, and it's to no surprise, obviously, but the homelessness. My wife and I, we have a good friend that works at the Murphy Center. No relation, by the way. But and I live in Midtown, and there was an article a couple of days ago in the Coloradoan about some business owners who are worried about the homelessness issue in Midtown Fort Collins. And kind of to piggyback, kind of a two-part question. Obviously, North College is an issue, and one of my clients actually is a judge here in town, and he's like, yeah, it's a problem. But what are your thoughts? What is the city's viewpoint on homelessness right now? And because people are worried, and I know businesses are worried. So
and we're all worried, right? Yeah. It is an interesting thing. So I met with the North College Business Association, and they're like, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, do you think that the government has a role to play in homelessness?" And they said, "No." The no government idea. I go, "Okay, then I guess we'll do nothing." They go, "No, do something." I said, "Okay." So, this is a big question. Is it the role of the government? Is that collectively, government can be anything anybody wants it to be, as long as we just decide what we want it to be. As simple as that.
Right.
So do we, and to what extent does the government get involved in homelessness? Increasingly, people are asking us more and more to be involved, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think that's wrong, right? So we need to apply the nuisance code, right? We need to look after the rights and responsibilities of all residents.
What is the nuisance code for those that?
Right. So there's something, in the legal world of just, if, and you have to meet all the criteria for, is it a public nuisance?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I got you. Okay. Okay.
So we have these codes and sort of things. So those should all be enforced at the same time. Now these are just idealism here, because it's very hard to do in practicality. All this, provide the services, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of come with the both and, approach. We have a very compassionate police force, and they presented to us last night about the encampments in the Midtown and in North College. We're also just seeing, a national trend of fentanyl and the opioids, and I'm pretty naive about that. But, I was on a call of mayors across the country about homelessness, and they gave this glowing example was Harvard. So they always do the case study, right? Rockford, Illinois solved homelessness, and here's how they did it. And the mayor of Oakland goes, "How many people did you house?" And they go, 50. She goes, "Oh, 50.
That's cute.
I'm very happy for them. And I have 5,000 people living in downtown Oakland." So some of it's historical. We ended the quote flop houses. We ended some things we thought were people before us thought were bad. We ended some of the mental health institutions, residencies, and then flash forward, and there's very fewer places to live. We've also restricted our housing supply, as you guys know way better than anyone. And then we've been a combination of mental health, drug addiction, and then there's another faction that's been referred to as the resource resistant, which are people who really are showing a strong preference for living.
Would those be more considered transients than homeless?
I think so, because to me, homeless people without homes are looking for a home. Yeah. And then, So I think it's an all hands on deck. I don't want to pass the buck to anybody. I just think, those are some of my musings. No one has a silver bullet, and that was clear from that mayor's call. But Houston's doing a lot. I think certainly housing is absolutely is a huge part. And then services, shelters are a good support, but not the solution, right? And then again, here's the question: how much money does the government put into it?
It's such an interesting thing. I mean, I think the majority of people in this country are, very, socially liberal and probably, more fiscal conservative, right? And it's like with homelessness, it's like, I don't know the answer to it. And, I know, and when you bring up that, Oakland and then this little town in Illinois, and everybody kind of has to approach it differently. So I don't know where I'm really going with this, but it's just like, it's a hard question to answer. But, people want answers, even though they don't have an answer.
And Fort Collins has been really great about getting groups together, and the outreach for Fort Collins has been fantastic, right? It's very compassionate, go out, know people, know what they need, know where they are. And the police have been unbelievably responsive and compassionate. And then I get emails, not another penny of my tax money for people without homes. And
that's what I was going to say is like, when you, not to get too political here, but typically more of the conservative side is like, we don't want government in our lives, right? Get out of our lives. but we want them in our lives when it affects us, right? And it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too sometimes.
And that's very natural, right? So they did laugh. I go, great. Well, I guess we'll do nothing. They go, no, you have to do something. I go, oh, okay. Now we have a conversation. And I'm very sincere. Like, childcare has come up a lot. Does the government provide childcare? It can if you want it to, but are you sure? Because we used to live in Denmark. You pay 50% taxes and you get tons of services. Shoot, you get college, you get daycare, you get dental, you get a check every 3 months. I got a check for having 2 kids, and I went and took it back to the town hall, and I said, I don't think I deserve this. They said, you're crazy. I'm like, I just get money, so.
But that's just never going to happen here.
That's true. And I'm not advocating. I'm just saying.
Right.
There are models of government that are like that, as we know. Yeah. That is not America. That's not where we're going. Yeah. It's just illustrative of when people agree to tax themselves more to get more services back. Yeah. It can look like that. That's also not perfect system either.
Yeah.
So the system we have is much more what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then we do have great private sector with the Murphy Center. We have the outreach. We have, and we have great collaborators with the nonprofits and our business community. And I think that's where the solution lies in some way. Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting as we've, Patrick and I, we've been able to interview yourself and Darren and Wade. And as I kind of think about how Fort Collins is run, not one person. When I was joking, I was like, how much power do you have, Jeni? And I kind of ask it because it's like, sometimes you almost want somebody. There you go. You almost want somebody. You almost want somebody to be able, like, I don't care what you think. This is what we're doing. It's like, not to say a dictatorship, but sometimes it's like,
but a dictatorship.
But a dictatorship, yes, but a dictatorship.
Very kind.
But does it feel like sometimes, like in your position right now, that you're just kind of slushing through the mud? It's like, I want to get these things done.
But it always feels like that.
The hurdles that you're having to jump through really,
absolutely.
Like huge.
Always feel.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's any way around it, but it's really interesting as I learn more about government and how Fort Collins is run.
But I think we're having had this interview with you, Jeni, is we're lucky to have somebody with a servant heart that is willing to put up with the bureaucracy BS and still want to fight through and have the entrepreneurial spirit of how do we solve these problems and not get bogged down or frustrated. I mean, I'm sure you get frustrated, like you said, beginning, but man, that takes a special person to be able to.
I couldn't do it.
No, still push through. So good. Thank you for being willing to be that kind of, vanguard for us on pushing through and still wanting to get things done. Cause I think it could be easy to just sit back, like, screw it.
Oh, someone asked me that the other day. Do you ever feel like giving up? I go, every 10 minutes. Yeah. But, I interned for Hank Brown when I was in college and on Capitol Hill in Washington. I said, oh my gosh, this moves so slowly. I just got to lose my mind. And he looked at me and he goes, would you have government move quickly? What a great question. And I said, I thought about that. So we want to remove the unnecessary bureaucracy that impedes our I don't even like the word progress. It's evaluative. Our innovation, our creativity. You have to unleash, have to keep the people's minds thinking and engaged, and right. And then some things, maybe it's okay not to make too fast. But I mean, there was an instance recently where a lot of oil and gas regulations coming around. And, I know the guy who owns the one oil well in Fort Collins, just call Ward Giltner and see if he wants to sell it. And no, there's process. And then I was like, but look at this stack of regulations. And then we have to inspect, and then you have to do this and that. And really what we want to do is maybe not have, now that our population has grown around that, maybe we don't want to have that anymore. And we buy open space all the time, and so maybe we just call board and make a deal. I don't know. Maybe
I saw that. I kind of, I was with you on that as well. And I saw like the back response was, but the process of that and the cost of doing that is so absurd. I'm like, well, but could it not be?
So I finally was just sitting there stewing on it. And one night I was kind of like, I just called him. I'm like, I'll just call him Ward. And I'm like, well, he called me back and he's like, what up? I go, he didn't know I was mayor. I was fine. He's not supposed to. And he grew up at Adriel Hills. I mean, come on, we're still a small town in some ways.
Yeah.
But that's so weird, because last week I was just thinking to myself, maybe I want to sell that. And I was like, okay. So now the city and the county have had a meeting with him, and maybe we buy it, maybe we don't, maybe the county, I don't know. But like, let's just make sure that we're just thinking about things and what is really the end goal. Is it 6 months of regulations for one oil well? And there are private property rights involved.
Sure.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just an example. So.
Well, I don't want to take us too much longer here. And honestly, it would be great to have you back in the future.
Yeah.
Jeni, these conversations are great. And, what's crazy is our viewership and listeners are continually increasing, and people really, when they're looking at Fort Collins, whether it's within or outside, they spend the time to do their research. And do I want to move to a city where the mayor is maybe entrepreneurial, libertarian, and forward thinking, but still respectful of what has come behind us? Yeah, I do. Or no, I don't. And it's allowing them to make those decisions for themselves. So thank you for taking the time to be on here, and hopefully we can have you back. But
I got one thing real quick before we wrap up. You're a big runner, Jeni, and my wife's a big runner, and we were so bummed that the Fortitude is no longer. Is that coming back? What do we got to do to bring the Fortitude back?
Well, they called me because the Bosleys are friends of my mom, obviously. They're the ones who started Boulder, and they didn't, the CSU called me like, oh God, what are we gonna do? So we tried to get more interest in Fort Collins. I don't know,
I know we were bummed.
Yeah, I think that it is CSU's race. So, but I've always been a fan of, I call it the ready, set, go race. I'm like, but that's more Fort Collins styles, pretty much like line up and go, we don't, so maybe someone will start a.
Yeah, I was my only 10K I've ever ran in my entire life.
Oh, good for you.
Yes. I need to, and I need to start running more, but
maybe there'll be something in its place. I'm not sure. I was sad to see it go too.
Well, one question we ask all of our guests, because Fort Collins is, the micro beer capital of whatever you can call it, the world or the U.S. But Patrick and I, we have our little favorites. But you got a favorite watering hole, patio, brewery? I know you're the mayor and you got to be political, but there's got to be a favorite out there that you go to, right?
Well, I live near Stodgy's, so
we just went there.
That's our local place. If you're, in the afternoon or early evening, you want to meet your friends and neighbors, I go there. And then I just full disclosure, Tim and Carol Cochran are my friends. So Horse and Dragon, I'm a fan.
Love Horse and Dragon. Yep, I used to live over there. Good.
I can't think of any I don't like.
No, we went to Stodgy for the first time. Patrick and I was so that was great. It's nice. They use pretty much all of like local ingredients, except for there's a few like they get some like a Belgian ale that the hops will come from Belgium.
And that's another example of mixed use zoning, right? So now we have a pub, a restaurant, and a grocery store. I mean, yeah, it's nice. And we all ride our bikes over there. It's a good quality of life that I think everyone could enjoy. You can see me out in the middle of the day, but I always swear the waiters to secrecy.
Well, this has been great. And I definitely appreciate you. And learned a lot about you and where we're kind of going as a city. So thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, and I'll come back anytime.
Oh,
And I think I'm going to see Mark next week.
Yeah, he just had back surgery, so hopefully he's doing all right. And he had talk to him about it. He had significant back surgery, but I think he's doing well. So
he's a good mayor.
Yeah. Well, as far I joked with Mayor Wade Troxel, I forgot that my uncle lived in Timnith. And when the family found out that he was running for mayor, I was like, fudge. I was like, I really no, like, please no. But then it was in Timnith, and he's such a, he's such a smart individual, and I'm glad that he's doing what he's doing and giving back. And I think he's doing well. So I'm glad it's, some collaboration between, two good people between you.
Oh yeah, he called me kind of fired up about something. I said, no, before you shout at me, I'm actually just Jeni James. I'm not really. He's like, oh, I love your dad. I go, yeah. And we're not doing that. Don't worry. It just looks like we're going to do that, but I'm not going to let that happen. So don't worry. He goes, okay, thanks. Great.
Oh man. Well, that's great that you guys are getting together, and
we are. We like it.
Tell them I say hello and appreciate you as well, and
You
your
too.
family and all.
Well, what about you guys and all the good things you're doing for our town? And reaching out this way is really important, because there aren't that many venues for people to become familiar like that. So,
well, it's there's a lot of great people moving here. I can say that, and the people that we talk to around the country, and they love Fort Collins. I mean, I was born and raised here, Poudre Valley Hospital right here. I was Fort Collins High School. So, but moved away, then ended up coming back with my wife. And no, we got to have you back on for sure. I mean, I got a bunch of other questions I never got to, but we would love to have you back. And this has been really great.
Anytime, and you're all the people, you just tell them to call me.
There we go.
Yeah. And listen, I will attest. I emailed you out of the blue, and you're like, "I'd love to do it." And so, I mean, that just goes to show how what kind of a person you are.
A little old school there. Yeah.
Old school. That's right. Well, Jeni, thanks again. We really appreciate it.
All righty, everybody. Thank you. And until next time, take care.
Bye-bye. See you at Horse and Dragon.
See ya.